Hey everyone, it's Deanna Fenton, and I want to welcome you today to this online kind of mini training about the GPDR. And I don't even know if I just said that right. GDPR. My guest is in the green room nodding her head. Okay, now I got it right. So some of you in the online world and in social media probably know a lot about this, and you're probably honestly kind of sick of hearing about it. However, many of you, I sense, are either unaware of it or still very confused about what this means to us. So I am bringing on my guest, who is attorney Christy Westerfeld, to talk to us about it, give us a little overview, and kind of some action items of what we all should be doing. And I know many of you in my audience are also more local businesses or nonprofits. So we're going to talk about whether this really affects you now or if it could affect you in the future. And that's one of the questions I've got for Christy. So if you know of somebody who has an online business currently and has a website that goes out or perhaps has a global audience, you want to share this with them because this is information that you need to make sure that they know as well as yourself. So if you can share this, that would be fabulous. If you have questions as we go along through our interview, please go ahead and post them in the comments. I'll keep monitoring these, and I am going to bring on Christy right now. Takes a second. There she is. Hey, Christy.
Hi, Deanna. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you. Just a quick.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, this is definitely the more that time has gone on and seeing all these things on Facebook in particular about this new regulation. This is truly something that needs an attorney to explain it. And that's kind of scary, I have to tell you the truth, because we all kind of go along, honestly, fat, dumb, and happy in this online world, thinking that we can just kind of operate on kind of autonomously as opposed to a brick and mortar business. But the truth is that's not the case. And this is a perfect example. So the first thing I want to also say is we're going to put some links into the post, and you're going to have the link to Christy's website because she has a lot of information on there about online business and the legalities and what you need to do. And we're going to be talking about some of those things that you do need to have on your website, regardless of the fact of whether you do business in the European Union and the GDPR affects you. So, Christy, why don't we answer the very first question, which is, what the heck is this? It's a four letters that I'm really sick of.
I know, right? The new four-letter word we hate. Yes, so this is GDPR. You said it exactly right. General Data Protection Regulation. And really what we're talking about here is online data protection and data privacy rights. So really, I want to make sure that people understand kind of that broad picture, because it's one of those things that when you understand why we're doing it and what the regulation means, it's a lot easier to understand how to comply. So it's really about, again, it's really about data collection and data privacy. Whether or not it affects us has to do with whether or not you market to or sell to folks in the European Union. So like Deanna said, if you have a website that people can opt in to a free resource, if people can purchase products from your website, if they can contact you via your website, if there's any way you collect data from them. And by data, we're talking name and email. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or crazy. It can be as in-depth as, if you have a pixel on your website tracking people, if you can, use their IP address to identify them. but it's basically any personal identifiable information. So for most of us, that's name and email, right? Or if you have your contact me page on your website, they can fill out their name, their email, and then type in a question to you. So hopefully that kind of answers, what it is we're dealing with, online data privacy and data protection. Whether or not it affects you is if it's possible that you're going to collect, or if it's likely that you're going to collect data, which again can just be name and email, from those in the European Union, is really kind of what it boils down to. So I guess that's kind of my general answer to what it is. We can certainly go into the details of how to comply and everything, but I want to make sure that I've got you so far, that you're following so far about what it is.
And see, that's where I kind of get concerned, because a good portion of my audience, or certainly my clients, are local businesses. They're local nonprofits. I mean, they can't control whether or not someone from the EU sends them a message, signs up for their list or whatever. So how does that affect somebody that really couldn't do business with someone in the EU?
So great question. I think, first of all, it's important to look at it realistically. If it's a local business where folks in the European Union where it's not realistic that they're going to contact them, there's no kind of opt-in for a free resource. There's no realistic reason why someone from a European Union country would give them their personal information. Then I think that it's reasonable to assume you don't need to comply. But I say that, hesitating because if you have a business where you sell an online course, let's say, or you provide any kind of a free resource to the masses, even if you're a local business, let's say you're a local yoga studio, but then you also offer free yoga tips in exchange for people's email addresses, that could require that you comply. So, and we can talk about what complying really means, because it's not, even if you're, quote unquote, have to comply with it, or even if you're, you fall within GDPR, there's a really good chance that complying doesn't really take a whole lot more effort, depending on what your personal situation looks like. And we can go into that now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Kind of talking about compliance. So it really, step one is determining whether or not it applies to you. And that's whether it's reasonable to believe that someone from the European Union would or could, opt in, provide you with their personal information. Step two is, okay, if you've determined the answer is yes, how do I need to comply? The number one thing that's important to do, that's kind of an action step, is update your privacy policy. So you want to get a GDPR compliant privacy policy. You can do that. For example, I sell templates for that. Other attorneys who do what I do sell templates for that. Or you can have your business attorney draft that for you. If you have your attorney draft it for you, absolutely fine. Just make sure that they're well versed in online privacy laws and that they're well versed in the GDPR regulations. They probably are. If they have clients who are startups, who are small businesses, this is most likely coming across their desk very frequently as well. So just make sure you're getting it from an attorney who knows what they're doing. This is not a situation where it's going to be okay to draft it yourself. I also discourage kind of the free privacy policy generators that you can find online. Reason being is GDPR gets pretty specific. So what needs to go in your privacy policy is more specific than what those generic privacy policy generators are able to do, because your privacy policy needs to be specific to online businesses. So we don't have to go too far into what you need on your privacy policy, because My answer is just, get one from your attorney or from an attorney like myself who sells templates. But really just so you understand, and so everyone here understands, is really what the reasoning behind why you need a new one is. You have to provide your website viewers with more detail about what you're doing with the information. So you've got to tell them exactly how you're collecting information. If you're collecting it, why are you collecting it? What are you going to use it for? Are you going to share it with anybody? Do you use a pixel on your website to track people? Are you able to look at their IP address? So I won't go on and on because it's kind of like, oh my gosh. But basically, you have to give them more detailed information and be more transparent with what you're doing with their data. Go ahead.
I think we're not getting feedback. Anyway, one of the things that I think we're not even conscious of, and I wanted to specifically ask about, is we are tracking people because we have Google Analytics on our sites. We have, if we do Facebook ads, or we intend to do Facebook ads at some time, we have Facebook pixels on our websites.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's some very specific things about who's responsible for what. So if we have those things on our website, whether or not we're doing business with someone in the EU, the fact that we're tracking that data, do we need to apply or adhere to the GDPR rules, or what?
So GDPR only applies to European Union data. So as of today, you can still track, other people's information, but it has always been, so it's not new that privacy policies are legally required. It's a California law that requires, as soon as you collect personal information from someone, so name and email, like we talked about, tracking, as soon as you're collecting that information, you have a legal responsibility to disclose to them what you're collecting, how you're using it, blah, blah, blah. So the legal requirement that a privacy policy absolutely has to be on your website is not new. What's new is that you kind of got to take it a step further and be even more detailed with respect to how you're, collecting and using data. It's also a new requirement under GDPR that you've got to give people the right to access the information that you have on them. A lot of times I've seen people do this where their policy states that they can have access to the information, but they're going to charge a fee, to go and access what information they have. That's no longer acceptable. It has to be a free service. They now have the right to, the data that's on your website or that you have from them. So I don't want to kind of get into the weeds of the details of a privacy policy, because I think, for purposes of a broad understanding of GDPR, it's just make sure you have a GDPR compliant privacy policy on your website. My opinion is the best way to do this is to purchase a template from myself or another attorney who specializes in online business. You can then complete it for your own business, put it into the footer of your website, and you're done. It's a pretty easy kind of an action step there. Get the template, fill it out, put it on your website, good to go. That's kind of a more manageable task. Oh, thank you. So that's kind of a more manageable action step, right? Step one, get the policy. That's it. The next kind of hurdle that we have to overcome is looking at how we have collected the data that we have thus far from European Union people. So there's kind of this retroactive requirement that we have to look at our current email list if we have one. So if you have an email list, the hurdle that we have to tackle there, and I'm going to get a little bit detailed here, so stick with me, but the hurdle that we have to tackle with our current list is we have to figure out who is on our list that's in the EU. Then from those people, which for a lot of us in the US, it's only a handful of people, unless you've got, a 10,000 person list and 8,000 of them are in the EU. Most of us, I was talking to another B schooler the other day, and she said she had 16 people on her list that were from the EU. So it's typically going to be a reasonable number. It's not going to be thousands unless you have a giant list and you do market to European Union folks. But for the vast majority of us, it's a handful. I think I have like 9. So it's not, you know.
I know, I have 3.
Yeah, see, so that's, it becomes a lot more reasonable once you realize, okay, it's only, you know, 40 people or 3 people or 8 people, whatever it is, that you have to specifically comply with. Then, so that's kind of the first step, figure out who's in the EU. Then we need to figure out how we got their information. So the main kind of red flag is if they opted into a free resource and we automatically added them to our email list. That's the problem that the GDPR is now saying is not okay, because we have to have their specific consent to add them to our email list. The regulation now looks at if they opted into a free resource. So if they signed up for your free checklist or signed up to some kind of a free resource, they only gave you permission to use their data for that reason. And the regulation now looks at it like you don't have permission to add them to your email list. You didn't get their specific consent to be also added to the email list. You also didn't get their specific consent for things like sharing their information. If you're uploading their, you know, email address into Facebook for lookalike audiences for your ads, any kind of additional information or additional things that you're doing with their information is no longer okay until you get their additional consent. So if you've heard kind of the phrase, you have to get fresh consent from those people, that's what that means. I will say, if you already got, so this is why it's important to look at how you came to get their information or how they ended up on your list, because if they just purely and plainly opted in to receive your newsletter, like if on your website it says, you know, enter your name and email here to be added to my newsletter or to receive promotions, you're okay, because the GDPR looks at that as they've already given you consent to be added to your email list. So if that's your scenario, that you already have their permission, if they've specifically opted into your email list or your newsletter or subscribe to your blog, whatever that is, you're okay. There's nothing else you need to do. Keep on doing what you're doing. It's only where you've collected something from an opt-in and then automatically added them to your list, because the GDPR is looking at that as you don't have their consent to get or to continue emailing them. They've only given you their information saying, I want the free checklist. I don't want to be on your email list necessarily. So the step that's required there is you just have to reach out to those people and get them to consent and like re-opt in to your email list. That's all you need to do.
Okay. And you know, that's really good, because my email inbox has been inundated over the last couple days
with similar emails.
Yeah, with every online service that I'm using, whether it's a hosting company, whether it's a social media tool or something, that one, they're notifying me they've updated their privacy policies, which obviously
we all should be doing as well. Notify your audience once you post it.
And then I noticed today, like, for example, I use a tool called Missing Letter, and they sent me specifically an email that said, because of regulations, you know, click this button if you want to stay on our list, click this button if you don't.
Yeah,
and
so
they're obviously sending it to everybody.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, there's a lot of people who are electing to not do that initial step of segmenting the list of here's EU people, here's non-EU people. I'm understanding, I don't personally use ConvertKit, but I'm understanding that ConvertKit has made it very easy to determine who's in the European Union, tag them, and then, you know, send a completely different, you know, set of emails to those folks.
And I used ConvertKit, and they did a really good job.
Yeah,
the only concern I had, and I couldn't find the information again, but I thought I had read something that they could only really do it if it was somebody that had been added to a list since 2016.
Mm.
But I don't know that 100%. And I do want to tell everybody, in this post, after we're done, I'm going to edit it with links to all the major email marketing companies to their policies. So you can read what they say they're doing to help you.
Yeah, and can I say something else while we're talking about the email services? And this gets a little bit into the weeds, so again, bear with me on this because I promise the answer is important. But the GDPR also distinguishes, well, it's not necessarily the GDPR that's distinguishing, but I'll say that for purposes of this, between what's called a data controller and a data processor. So data controllers are basically us, people who decide what information is being collected. So if you in your business are choosing, I'm going to collect someone's name and email, I'm going to create this opt-in page. If you're choosing how information is being collected, stored, used, all of that, you're the data controller, which is 99.9999% of us. It's most likely you're the data controller. Data processors are ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, all of those services who they're not collecting anything, they're just doing stuff with it. So the one other kind of regulation that they're adding here is that if you are a data controller, you have to have something called a data processor agreement in place with those data processors. So don't panic because, and the reason I bring this up is because you're saying you're going to link to all the major services information. That's important because most of them have created a data processor agreement for you that you can go in and either read or electronically sign. I personally have ActiveCampaign, and I got an email about a week or two ago inviting me to look at their data processing agreement and then electronically sign it via, I think it was DocuSign or one of those, and then download it and have it. So the responsibility is technically on us, the data controller, to get those processing agreements. But with large companies like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, all of those other companies, they're not going to like individually sign all of our agreements. So they've done it. And all you have to do is either review it, or if it's something that is a signable document that they've decided to create like ActiveCampaign did, just go in there, do the electronic signature, download it, put it in your file. You probably will never, ever need it. But it's just kind of one of those steps that is also recommended to take.
Okay, and you kind of answered another one of my questions, which is, for those of us that are small businesses, I mean, the likelihood of the European Union coming after us is probably pretty small. However, the question I have too is, because of the concerns about data privacy in the US, is the US regulations far behind anyway that we're going to have to do this?
Such good questions. Yes. So, okay. So to answer the first part of your question, how realistic is it that we're going to get caught? In all honesty, not very, right? But the realistic way that this could come back to haunt us is if a customer complains, because we're all becoming a lot more savvy with data collection now, right? Because we're all learning about GDPR, everybody's becoming more aware, and people know, I mean, it's happened to all of us, right? Where you purchase something or you click a box and all of a sudden you're getting 800 new emails. That's dramatic, but you're getting, you see when you've been added to someone's list. Most likely people are just going to be irritated and click unsubscribe. But if somebody gets mad about it, they can report your business as saying this business is not GDPR compliant. Now that person would have to be in the EU, and it would, whatever regulating body that they report it to would have to decide to take action on it. So I don't know how realistic that is, but in my opinion, that's the most likely scenario where you're going to get in trouble, is if it's brought to their attention by a customer complaint saying that you're non-compliant, which is not really, in my opinion, it's best to just make sure you're complying, get the new privacy policy up, and then, double check your list and get any new consents that you need to. But yeah, the realistic, how realistic is it? It's really hard to say. I don't want to say you're not going to get caught, because my opinion is that it's probably a long time coming that for us, the FTC or, the European Union is going to make an example out of somebody, because online business is becoming so big and everybody has some kind of online business now. The vast majority of people are not complying. If I had $1 for every time I looked at a website that didn't have a privacy policy, and these are big companies, don't have it, no idea they need it. I think there's a chance that that's going to start becoming, an issue. And then as far as, is the US far behind on this? I don't think so. I don't have any information, but looking at how Congress treated Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook data breach fiasco, right? I don't think they were very pleased about, learning how, the extent to which Facebook uses our data without giving proper notice. I was loving it because Congress, specifically pointed to their privacy policy and said it sucked. So this stuff matters. Facebook, of course, has 2 billion users. It's a much larger scale than the vast majority of our businesses with, anywhere from, 80 to 10,000 people on our list, something of that range. That's not 2 billion. We're not using data the way Facebook does. They process what's called sensitive data as well, political views, religious views, sexual orientation, all of those issues. They also go way in depth into tracking things for advertising purposes. So I would venture to guess a lot of us, most of us, all of us don't do that. But the point being, I think it's a flagged issue for the US. And I don't think it will be very long before other countries follow suit. I don't know if it's going to look exactly the same as GDPR, but I think as far as from a business strategy perspective, I don't think it's a bad idea to either comply now or look at complying with everyone at some point, to make sure everybody on your email list has given that specific consent, just so you don't have to keep redoing it every time another country enacts a law.
That's a good point. And one thing too, because since we were talking about the privacy policy to begin with, if you plan or run Facebook ads, you have to have a privacy policy.
They don't even let you run ads. Yeah.
Right. So you should have one you should have had one to begin with. But if you're going to do any kind of online marketing and you plan on using Facebook ads, they've always required that. So.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is that the penalties for not having a privacy policy in place is ridiculous. Like it's meant to punish. It's not, in my opinion, it's not really a fair and reasonable penalty. It's up to $2,500 per person who visited your website without a privacy policy on it.
Holy crap! So
wow. What if 100 people came to your website? 100. That's like nothing when we're talking about website traffic, right? 2,500 times 100. And again, these are maximum fines. So it's most likely going to be much less. But the FTC can be ruthless. They've come after people personally. They've, filed huge lawsuits against people for breaches of, data policy, data collection, and similar issues. So this is not something we want to mess around with, especially when it's a pretty simple way to comply. Make sure you've got the privacy policy on there. Make sure you're not doing anything shady with people's data. You're, I would say 99.999% certain that you're fine and you're complying just by doing those things.
Okay. So if that didn't convince you to at least get the privacy policy on, I don't know what will, because I had no idea that the fine.
Isn't that insane? Yeah.
That's wow.
People have owed millions of dollars in fines for failure to comply with FTC regulations. Millions.
Wow.
And these aren't, these are somewhat larger companies, but a lot of them aren't Facebook, they're smaller companies like that. So yeah, it's definitely, if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will.
Wow. So there's her website address, folks. She's got the templates on her site. And I should also mention you've got templates that cover all kinds of other legal protections depending on the type of business. So very, very, and she has a great, your ebook is all about what you need.
Yeah, so if you want kind of a complete rundown of online business 101 in terms of what you need legally, yeah, my ebook is a really, really good resource. It talks about everything from business entity selection, website, what you need to ensure your website's compliant, client agreements, terms of use, what to do when you have an online course, and all of that riveting stuff. So yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and just so you know, I mean, Christy also does a number of services as well. I'm going to put this back up there too. She's handling a trademark registration for me right now. So you have other questions, legal questions about your business, you can also contact her there too. Let's see if they're checking my questions.
Yes.
So,
one other thing I'll say is this: we haven't talked about yet is how to comply with GDPR moving forward.
yes.
So we've talked about with the privacy policy. We've talked about what to do retroactively with your list, but there's a lot of confusion with how to comply going forward. I think people have heard, do I have to have an extra checkbox? Do I need a double opt-in? All that good stuff. So let's kind of clear that up. So kind of how we were talking about the point of the GDPR in terms of, it's ensuring transparency with data collection. Moving forward, you need to make sure that if you're going to add someone to your email list, you get specific permission to do that. And the main way people are doing that is once you've got an opt-in to a free resource or something like that, you can do a few different things. The first option is to add a checkbox in the opt-in page where somebody's typing their name and email. You can add a checkbox there that says, check here if you would like to also be added to our email list or, to receive our newsletter or whatever it is that the service that you're wanting to offer them. Have a box there. And then if they check it, they're added to your email list. If they don't check it, they just get the freebie and that's it. Which is kind of a bummer when we're trying to grow our email list, but there it is. The other way to do it is my personal favorite, which is you can request the opt-in, so request their name and email in exchange for a free resource. And then typically that, you're going to give them the free resource in an email. So you're going to send them an email and say, yay, here's your free opt-in, or here's your free, checklist, whatever it is. In that initial email, sell them on why they want to be on your email list. So it gives you, a little bit more than just a box. Gives you an opportunity to introduce yourself, your business, what you're doing, because they're obviously interested enough that, they wanted your free resource. I think there's a good chance that if you say in the email, here's what I do, here's what I offer if you choose to be on my email list, the value they get, and then have the opt-in in the body of that email where they can click and sign up to be on your email list. So it doesn't have to be the checkbox thing. It can be, you can do it in a number of different ways. You just have to get their specific individual voluntary consent to add them to your email list.
And, and the thing too is just to remind people that may have joined us late or aren't that familiar with it, these requirements have to be in place by next week, by May 25th. And I know, it's very frustrating because I had read and realized that this has been going on and been in the works for 2 years.
Yep.
And all the email marketing companies only in the last 30 days, maybe, have been rolling out ways of helping us to comply. So that's why I'm going to put the links to all the major service providers like I have MailChimp, Constant Contact, ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, Drip, Kajabi, to their policies, because some of them do have the capability of you just having a checkbox, and the checkbox will automatically add, and then you've got the record that that person did consent. But a lot of the big ones like Infusionsoft, I understand, still doesn't have that ability. So your suggestion of doing it through the delivery of the freebie with a link that would add the tag, that's one way that people can do it. But I've seen some people with checkboxes, and the checkboxes aren't necessarily doing it.
Yeah, it's not. I think sometimes people hear, oh, okay, I need a checkbox, and they don't quite they don't quite know how to comply. Or the other one that I've seen a lot that is also not okay is you cannot just have a line there that says, by entering your information, you're also consenting to be added to the email list. It has to be a separate agreement or not. And that's because included within the GDPR language is that consent has to be freely given. So they're determining that if you're making it mandatory, in order to get the freebie, they have to agree to be on your list. They've determined that that's not, or it's being interpreted as, that's not qualifying as being a freely given consent, because let's say someone wants your free checklist but doesn't want to be on your email list. There's no way to do that. They have to agree to be on your email list if they're going to type in their name and email and hit, click yes. So it has to be that separate, whether it's a checkbox, whether it's a separate opt-in in the delivery email, or even on the thank you page, after you go through an opt-in, if there's a page that comes up after that says, thank you, please check your email, you could add it in there to say, thank you for downloading. Would you like more information? Please join my email list. You could do it that way too. So there's a number of different ways to comply. The point is you need to get their specific consent to add them to your email list. That's really the goal. So you can do it however you want to, as long as you're getting some sort of, action from them, whether it's checking the box, clicking an opt-in, something where they're confirming, yes, I would like to be added to your email list.
Okay. So if this is all new information to you, and there is a possibility you would have someone from the EU sign up for your list, you got some work to do. And so again, I will be posting the links to all of the major email marketing companies. And I would highly suggest, if you have any questions, obviously get the privacy policy. And again, on Christy's website, she has more than just the privacy policy, because there are other things such as terms of use of the website that, it's so funny, because I think people still think starting an online business is like, oh, you just put up a website, and it's a business. There are requirements and protections you have to put into place.
Yeah, I know, and that's my mission to educate people on, even though it's not a brick and mortar business, it's a real business. You're collecting information, you're providing services, people are paying you for this stuff. It's, even though it's, you're doing it from your sweats and on your couch, it's just the same, as if you were taking out a business loan and doing a brick and mortar store or shop or, whatever. It's the same thing. You have the same responsibilities, arguably more so because you're collecting their data from the get-go, the name and email, you're tracking their website use. I mean, I didn't even realize what you can track with like Facebook pixels. There's an ability to track too what the website people go to immediately before and immediately after they visit your website. That all goes way over my head from a tech perspective, but there's a lot of ways to like casually stalk people, and we need to make sure, that if we're doing that, we're being responsible about it. And then now, we've got to tell them about it in our privacy policy. And that's just, I think it's only going to become more and more important. So it's not something to put off. buckle down, comply now, figure out the ways you're collecting data, put it all, make sure that's all in your privacy policy. And then moving forward, you will be able to sleep at night knowing that you're compliant.
Yeah. And again, it's not just the freebies, folks. It's if they're submitting a contact form from your website, you're collecting data.
Yeah. Any information you have on them.
And it is interesting. And I decided probably tomorrow I'm going to do a little quick demo because
that's good.
Talking about the data that is being collected, Google Analytics captures incredible detail of data on people. And they're complying, obviously. They're doing what they need to do. But they're using this as an opportunity to, and I'm getting this from a gentleman. I'll find the link to the blog post and reference it also in this post, that they're asking people that have Google Analytics on their websites to either agree to purge all data collected prior to, I think it was 26 months ago, or say I want it retained. Now, my understanding from this post is it's more along the lines if you're using more advanced Google Analytics segmentations and goals and tracking, not just how many hits did my website get.
Right.
But, and it's not necessarily an issue of complying with the regulations as it is just saying they're going to clear out some data. So if saving that data is important to you, I'm going to do a little quick tutorial probably tomorrow and show you what you need to do, because anybody that has a Google Analytics account should have gotten this email. In fact, numerous emails. I think I've probably gotten 3 or 4. And they're saying they're going to purge this data by the end of the month. So,
yeah. Everybody's making changes. Companies like that, Facebook, Google, that do store a lot of information are really on the hot seat. And yeah, us as business owners, it's important to comply. Again, it shouldn't be, a huge task. Like we said, most of us only have a handful of European Union people on our email lists. So if you want to just comply with, those handful of people, just email them, ask them if they want to opt in or to not, opt into your list or not. If they don't, delete them. If they do, they're back on your list. Get your privacy policy. And then moving forward, just make sure you're getting that additional consent. And on a, that's really on a basic level, that's really the main pieces of what you need to do. It doesn't have to be, this huge life altering task. It's just kind of, getting into it and getting it done.
Well, and that's just the facts. It just has to be done. And it's, like I said, it seems so interesting that this has been in the works for 2 years, and it's almost like, boom, as of probably the 1st of May.
Deadline's coming up. Yeah. A collective procrastination on the part of the world.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It wasn't even an issue, for a long time.
So again, the most important thing, get that privacy policy, and you can get it on Christy's website. I've got the link there again for you to go to her website. And again, depending on your type of business, she has some other fabulous templates available that
thank you.
Client agreements, etc., that can be very, very valuable for you and protect your business. So thank you so much, Christy. I appreciate it. And we were able to get it done before your baby woke up from his nap. Yep. He's still
napping.
Yay!
So we're good, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks again. Again, everybody check out Christy's website and let people know, share this Facebook Live if you know of somebody else who may not be up to date on what they need to do, because this is serious stuff. This is important. So
not optional.
Yeah, not optional. You heard it straight from the lawyer's mouth. Thanks again, Christy. Take care.
Of course. Good to see you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.